We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present.
It's 2002 and we're in Australia's favourite holiday destination, Bali. AFL star Jason McCartney and his teammates flew in today to celebrate the end of a successful football season. Like most holidaying Aussies, they found the nearest bar and settled in for a few drinks. They're right in the middle of the busy tourist spot of Qatar, known for its nightlife. They've worked hard. Jason's ready to relax. But in this same bar, a suicide bomber is preparing to detonate a backpack. This moment and those that follow will go down in history as the single largest loss of Australian life due to a terror attack. Jason walks into the bar as one of Australia's top sportsmen, but leaves with devastating injuries. I'm at Middleton, and this is Headgame. Today, the remarkable story of a comeback that became the focus of a grieving nation. Jason McCartney, thanks ever so much for coming on the podcast. Yeah,
great to be here with you, Ed.
No, it's really good to have you on, mate. You're sat opposite me now and I'm looking at the scars on your arms and the burns everywhere, and it looks intense. Run me through the build up to that day.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting one because we'd actually been away a week prior to when I was in Bali. We'd been away on an end of season trip. We'd actually been in New Orleans, so obviously I was thinking that might be a little bit more hectic than obviously a nice relaxing trip in Bali a week later. So yeah, been away with a group of about 40 of us in New Orleans, and after that everyone dispersed. Some stayed on, some come home, and I came home with one of my teammates back to Sydney, and then we went straight to Bali. So we're going there for a week, and just a couple of friends from Perth we're catching up with, and I'm a regular visitor that time of year to Bali, so I'd always know a lot of people, some that live there and some that would be over there at that time of year. So, an end-of-season trip New Orleans and then a week to relax and recuperate in Bali. Because beyond that, fast-forwarding to December of that year, my wife Narissa and I were getting married. So
you were making the most of it.
Yeah, there's a bit going on.
So you come back from New Orleans. I take it that was just a pure lads trip.
Yep.
Unwinding. Like we do in the military when we come back off of operations, we have 6 months on tour, we come back, we vent, it's a case of, right, for you guys as well, the season's over, the mission's complete as such, let's all get together.
Yep.
And then Bali comes, and at any stage do you think, I can't do a Bali trip as well, or are you just thinking I've committed, I've got to show up, I've got to be there?
It's funny you should say that because we flew back to Sydney. I think we got here on the Friday, and it was a Saturday morning we were flying out to Bali, which happened to be October the 12th. So we only flew in that morning, got there mid-afternoon, and that evening I remember with my teammate Mick Martin being in the room. We're staying at the Hard Rock Hotel, and we were both looking at each other thinking, I don't know if we can actually go out for dinner and go out tonight.
Yeah.
And we knew we were meeting some friends from Perth, so we did go out for dinner in Kuta, and then after that, obviously, we went to Paddy's Bar. We were sort of making our way to the Sari Club, but it was really early, and I thought we're not even going to be able to hear each other talking in there, so we'll go across the road to Paddy's Bar, and look, the rest is history. We're only there probably 15 minutes, and that was the first of 3 or 4 blasts around that area, and that was the suicide bomber in the bar where we were at Paddy's Bar.
So you walk into Paddy's Bar, you're with Mick, you're with 2 other colleagues. It's just a normal night, right? You can never preempt, or was something out of place? Did you get a gut feeling? Was there anything that was out of place? Was there anything, that you look back on now and think, when you look back on things, you go, that was a bit sus, or not, or you just like...
There wasn't. The only thing that was, like, I looked at Mick and I spoke to Mick, it was quite amusing. There was a group of guys behind us, and they had the Hawaiian shirts on, they had an ironing board pretending they were surfing, and it was sort of a wink and a nod between Mick and I, because that was us last week. That was us in New Orleans. So these guys are on a trip and having a wow of a time. And then, like I said,
and you're recovering from the trip. Looking back,
we're recovering.
Just a couple of beers and we're out of here.
But it was then, obviously, the explosion itself, and then it was like everything's racing through your mind. And instantly for me, I thought firecrackers, and maybe those guys had firecrackers and that was one that accidentally went off or something.
So take me back, Jason, to that moment where the firecracker moment.
Yeah.
Take me back to when you knew that something was going on. Not necessarily that you were blown up like you were, but you knew something, like you just mentioned the firecrackers.
It was a split second. Like you're looking at these guys, you're having a chat, and then this explosion, which I've never heard anything that loud. So I was perforated eardrums instantly, and it was just this fireball, and it was all split second reaction. Thankfully, I was quickly able to turn, so it hit me right in the middle of the back. Now, I played AFL footy for over 12 years, and it's a physical game, body contact. You get hit hard, but nothing ever to that force. So I was just very fortunate I was able to pick myself up. But what it was, everything.
You got it in the back.
Yeah, everything's racing through your mind. And at first, it was like I said, this firecracker. If I've been shot, because it was just sizzle of the fireball. But what I realised is I was lucky. I was able to pick myself up off the ground, but the panic set in for me because I couldn't see, like the sheer brightness of the explosion. I couldn't open my eyes. I thought I was blinded. Now, it felt like minutes, but it was only seconds, and the vision did return. And then I realised the building's on fire. And I remember looking over my left shoulder and I could see the flames roaring up my T-shirt, and I was on fire. So it was quickly ripped my top off. And then it was absolute blur. Like I reached across, I knew Mick was standing next to me. It wasn't him. There was a group of girls behind us, and two of them we actually knew from Melbourne. One had done some part-time work at the football club. But I don't think in that situation, if that was your worst enemy, it wouldn't matter. You're just trying to help. So I thought it was Mick. It didn't happen to be. It happened to be one of the girls, and we were very lucky because from where the explosion took place, and I didn't know at the time, we're only 5 metres from where it took place. So we had probably a distance of 20 metres to go to the building. And I look back now and I just think how fortunate I was to have someone else who were able to aid each other and guide to try and get out that building. Now, I remember I just thought once again, it's like yesterday sometimes I thought, Jason, how clumsy, I tripped over. But the clumsiness, yes, because we couldn't see because of the darkness and just the building was ablaze and tumbling down. But we couldn't actually hear because of the perforated eardrums. The coordinated attack was the suicide bomber where we were, and then within minutes there was a car bomb 20 metres up the road out the front of the Sari Club. So suicide bomb causes as much devastation as possible and carnage, but flush everyone out on the street, and then there's a car bomb. So in our desperation to get out of that building, the second blast just blasted us off our feet back into where we're trying to escape from.
So you got hit twice.
Yeah.
So first of all, and I think people don't appreciate just like you said, the perforated eardrums, the vision, the brightness of that, knocking you off your feet. That alone, then you're on fire, right? There's so many different. That's why you're disorientated. You can't make a decision. So and this happens in seconds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
then you're crawling out of this bar.
Yep.
And you get blown back into the bar from a car bomb.
Yeah, yeah. Just
what's going through your head?
Just the force of it. But at the time, we didn't know that. We just didn't know about the Sari Club. Didn't know about the car bomb. Even at that stage.
So what's going through your head? Do you try and compute what the hell is happening?
Yeah, well, it was the early stages. It was, is it fireworks? Have I been shot? No, this is worse, but I don't know what it is. And then it's just survival mode.
But when you see yourself on fire, do you think, right, fuck, it could have been a gas explosion, could have been...
Well, that's what we got told when we got to a bit later on, when we got to the hospital that night, was to keep everyone calm that this could have been a gas explosion. But yeah, it was... Like I remember getting out the front, the person I was with were aiding each other that couldn't find them. And then I'm just, for a moment, just looking at this building. It's ablaze and tumbling down. And my first thoughts are with my teammate, Mick, and my two friends, my great mate from Perth, Peter Hughes, and his friend, Gary Nash. And I thought, my goodness, I'm never going to see them again. They're in there. And then once again, it was only moments, and Mick appeared from the smoke and rubble, and it was so random because he's standing right next to me. Now, he had some minor welts from the burns, and he had the button-up shirt, and the buttons had been blown off, but minimal physical injuries for him, and really his leadership and direction played a critical role at that point in time because obviously I could see my hands had been badly burnt and there was soot and there was blood, but that sort of melted away, and I knew I was in pain in my back and my legs, but obviously being so close to that suicide bomber, the makeup of the blast, and then obviously what it picks up in its wake, being in a bar, which is glass and metal, it's the explosion, but then it's the shrapnel wounds. And I had shrapnel embedded in my lower back and legs, and I had a decent hole blown in my my left calf. But Mick, he just he had the perforated eardrums as well, but he dragged me up the road and he's trying to get transport to get out of there. Now, it's hard enough to get transport in around that area, Cooter, at the best of times, but after what had transpired, you were never going to get in a vehicle. So he dragged me further up the road and he just grabbed a motorcyclist on a moped, Balinese guy, and he just threw me on the back. And he said, get him to the Hard Rock Hotel. And true to his word, Mick just jumped on the next bike behind me. So that's how he got me out of there. Now most people would think, hang on, you've been caught up in an explosion. You're heading back to the hotel. But it was a masterstroke because 10 years I've been travelling there. I think Mick probably over 6 years. Never been to a hospital. Didn't know where one was. But what he knew and what I knew is the hotel, there's always a doctor on duty. Exactly. So that got us out of there pretty quickly. Back to the Hard Rock Hotel, we put a shutter through the spine, I think, of everyone there. At centre stage at the Hard Rock Hotel, there's generally a band playing, and I think most had sort of heard an explosion but not knowing what it was. But then when Mick sort of drags me in, and I'm pretty well banged up, and he's a bit rugged as well, just chaotic panic scenes for everyone there. But for us,
are you falling in and out of consciousness?
I was all right. No, I was all right then. I was all right, yeah. But
so you can remember everything.
Yeah, I can remember everything. I can't remember the pain because obviously the shock takes over.
Yeah, the adrenaline's pumping through your body.
But having that doctor there assess very quickly, and then you're unfortunate to be in that situation, but from the moment it happened, I'm just extremely lucky every moment beyond that because I was able to make it out there. Mick, I don't know where I would have went if I was left to my own devices, but yeah, Mick gets me to the hotel, the doctor on duty, assessed quickly, and then they loaded us in the back of a van and they took us. It was about a 25-minute trip, which I do remember the pain there because I felt every bump. But they said it was an ambulance. Kind of was, but I'm in the back and I'm sliding around side to side, and obviously the burns, it's pretty uncomfortable when you're hitting the sides of the back of that van. But again, we got to the Sanglar Hospital in Denpasar, which is a local hospital, and again, we got there quickly. So all I remember is going into this emergency ward, and there's probably only 15 or 20 people there. I can see a little bit of what's around me, but I was in a bad way by then, body going in and out of shock.
Yep.
Mick standing over me with the doctor, so much comfort and support and reassurance, but probably in a space of 45 minutes to an hour, that swelled to over 200, and there was just so much carnage coming in. But I could see a little bit, but I was, because of going into that shock, I was protected. But once again, for the people in there trying to help us, and my mate Mick, who didn't have the physical injuries I sustained, but there's no doubt with what he witnessed, the mental scars for him cut far, far deeper because unfortunately he had to witness the carnage coming in.
Yeah, and he was taking care of it, right? Because he was not as physically injured as you. Obviously, leadership from any sort of, elite sportsman, athlete, it does kick in those times of need, which is a lifesaver, I believe. Yep. But also, the adrenaline that keeps you going, especially when you look at your teammate or you look at your comrade to your left, and it's like, right, especially if they're in a worse way than you are, something kicks in. And I've been there on the battlefield as well. Yep. So you're the first ones to the hospital.
From what I remember, there was only like 15 or 20 people there. So once again, we were lucky to get medical attention and then get to that hospital pretty quickly. Albeit what I know now, it's they did an amazing job there.
So the suicide bomber, just to go back, was the backpack on his back? Did it was literally a suicide, but it wasn't. Yeah. He dropped off a backpack, walked out, remotely detonated it. It was a suicide. And a question that you probably get asked all the time, which I'm going to ask: you can't. Do you remember seeing anyone with a backpack on? Or
It's a great question. No, I don't.
You don't?
Yeah, I don't. But the fact that he was so close, though, that's the thing that when I talk about being very fortunate, yeah, for that to happen 5 metres away, yeah, very, very lucky to be here.
And also it depends if he's got that on his back. It depends, where he's facing, because obviously his body would take a lot of the impact. Where you're stood to the actual direct blast, which for you to be knocked off your feet like you did, and that backpack must have been facing you in a pretty hefty type of way.
And that's the other random nature of it all. In our situation, and then I've spoken to so many others obviously since that. Essentially, there was a group of 4 of us, and Mick, minimal injuries, Gary, Peter, and myself, 50 to 60% burns. And I hear of others in a group of 3 or 4, and unfortunately, one loses their life, one minimal burns, one lost limbs type thing. So it was so random that you could be so close, but then just so many different outcomes depending on the impact.
Wow. So you're at the hospital. Do you remember, there obviously is a moment where you're in severe pain and...
Yeah. I remember being moved to a waiting room with about 6 people waiting to be operated. And all I remember is, you're on your own. But it is quite remarkable, those disciplines of being elite sportsman or obviously your background, what does come to the fore and really helps you. So it was, as bad as it was just trying to remain calm. There was someone next to me, and I don't know whether it was male or female, but they were in so much pain and they were screaming. And I was just trying to, please, stay calm. You were trying to...
you don't want that knock-on
You don't want
effect.
that because there's 6 of us in there. And then it was my turn. And all I do remember then is just laying there looking up, and there was 4 or 5 Balinese doctors, and that's then I'm out to it. And they perform an operation which I assume had to be pretty quick because there's so many waiting, but they removed some of the burnt tissue, which we found out later on there's a fair bit, and obviously multiple operations later on, and just try and remove some of that obvious, I suppose, shrapnel, and then get you out because so many others waiting. And then, look, I knew nothing about burn injuries then. I know a lot now. And one of the big factors is infection. And for me, and I assume many others, they didn't have enough dressing to dress those wounds. So obviously after the surgery, most of those wounds for me lay open and exposed to infection. So pretty much the operation, and then all I remember then is 10 or 11 o'clock that next day on the Sunday, sort of waking up, and that's when I found out that it wasn't a gas explosion, as they'd talked about the night before to try and keep everyone calm. And it was amazing the impact, as bad as it was for all of us, when you find out actually what it was, and it was a terrorist attack. It just put a whole new light on the situation, to be honest.
Do you go into a deeper hole? What happened? Or do you just go, right, I've just got to get through this. I've got to recover. I've got, make sure that Mick's okay. I've got to make sure that the people that are with me are right. What's going through your head? Because you're not only you waking up, I suppose, a different person, because you got 50, 60%. I can see them quite, obviously sat next to you here. So you're looking at yourself, then you get this devastating information on top of that. Is that a moment that you're just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, for us, for that split moment,
that must have been heavy.
Heavy. But then it was like, okay, what can I control?
Yeah.
And it was all about absolute positivity and just, what do I need, what treatment, and then the steps in place around recovery, which obviously comes later on. But my first port of call was obviously there was a young couple, and this is where, I felt really well supported. I didn't see Mick again. He came back to the hospital. He went home very early hours of the morning. He came back. There was a couple of other guys that I'd played with before that were over there with other clubs or end of season, just holidays. They came in with Mick. And they're going round and round looking for me. They're asking where I would be. They were told, have a look out there. There's a sheet with names of missing and deceased. He could be on that. So just an idea of how chaotic the scenes were there. They actually Mick couldn't find me the next day. So there happened to be there was a young couple from Sydney. They were living in Singapore, and they just came to help. And for whatever reason, they gravitated towards me, and I was able to get hold of their phone. I thought, I've got to call my fiancée, Narissa, my now wife. And I called her and I got hold of her, and she'd obviously come across some of the images from the night before, but I was trying to keep her calm. So it worked for a period of time. But I said, look, obviously you're across what's happened. There's been a terrorist attack. I've got some burns, but I'm getting well looked after. But I've got, and this is where humour, it's
in
strange.
the face of
Humour,
adversity.
yeah, you need humour.
Yeah.
And I just said to my wife, I said, but I've got no clothes. I'm in hospital and I've got a gown. They'll fly me to Darwin. Can you get on a flight, organised with Dad or one of my brothers, get on a flight to Darwin, bring your backpack. I need shorts, T-shirt, and I need some runners. So that put her mind at ease. And obviously, later on when I did get flown to Darwin, obviously the shock for her, the enormity of it all when, again, she eventually saw me because Dad and my brother and Narissa, I was there for about 10 hours in Darwin, but they couldn't find me. They were going in. They'd actually been in and out of my room, but they just didn't recognise me because of the disfigurement of the burns and just the swelling. And obviously there was so many patients that went back via Darwin.
They didn't recognise you?
Nah, it took a while, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I had some more surgery in Darwin as well. And then, yeah. So I really only got 30, 40 minutes with them before it was then, okay, I'm being flown back to Melbourne. It didn't matter where you lived, and it was lucky. I got back to the Alfred Hospital, one of the world's leading trauma hospitals. Obviously, we're living in Melbourne at the time. Your support network's there, which is really important. But it could have been anywhere. Like Peter Hughes, my mate from Perth, he ended up in Adelaide, and Gary, who was Pete's mate from Perth, he ended up in Brisbane. So it just depended on what hospital could take on the amount of patients.
So how long were you in Bali before they flew you back?
Yeah. I was there. I was Monday. I was there all day Sunday, and it would have been early hours of Monday morning.
Oh, so they literally, you went in, they sort of done their triage on you, just sorted you out, patched you up, sort of had to deal with your burns, and then literally straight on a plane.
So I don't know how the evacuation process was put in place, but it was pretty swift. And there was a little bit of confusion. The Hercules planes flying over to medical support and then just retrieve and get back to Australia. But
so that was a military operation.
Yeah,
we're on
the Hercules planes.
Yeah. So you're there. Obviously, the embassy's well informed. Yeah. You're getting patched up before you know it. You want to hurt back to
Darwin.
Yeah.
So slow and steady. So that was interesting because there was a bit of confusion. I was told I needed to be on the first flight out there, but once again, I ended up in a room which was kind of like an office, and there was only 5 or 6 other people in there. And again, this couple was really supporting me and with me all the time. So although there was an element of pain, obviously, I felt well supported. There was others that seemed like they were really struggling and no one was with them. So in the end, if I had my time again and know what I now know, I would have just kept demanding, if I'm on the first flight, I need to get on that. But I thought I was relatively okay because support, not maybe in as much pain. So I waited a bit longer and others took my spot.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the early hours of Monday morning when I was eventually flown out. But
and how did you get on the plane? Are you what state are you in? Are you rolled onto?
You're on the stretcher.
Yeah, you're on the stretcher.
You're on the stretcher.
You're still bed bound.
Bed bound. You're on the stretcher, and the stretcher's me being 6'3" and 100 kg. Those stretchers are pretty narrow, and I'm not fitting on the stretcher well. So with the burns, it was pretty uncomfortable. And then the other thing, I'm a bit claustrophobic. So we're stacked in the Hercules plane, and this that was like. But I was pretty much out to it. I remember obviously getting to Darwin, having time in Darwin, and then I remember being flown back to Melbourne. We went via Adelaide, and we dropped some patients off at Adelaide, and then it was back to Essendon Airport in Melbourne, and then it was straight into a chopper and straight to the Alfred.
And when you say that your family had trouble recognising you, were you out of it when they first got there, or were you just in and out of consciousness? You're in a pretty bad way still, right?
Just in and out then.
So that's a bit of an elusive state of mind.
Yeah. So I'd had some more treatment, obviously, in Darwin where they were able to sort of wrap the burns and get some more treatment because they were exposed, the wounds, because they just, like I said, in Bali, they did an amazing job, but they weren't resourced to handle the enormity of that.
Yeah, I can imagine that 20 years ago as well.
Yeah,
it's like,
yep.
And then so you hit Darwin, and when do you actually feel like, right, I've been fully fully treated. This is my start to recovery. You know, the moment where, you know, the pain is being relieved through medication. You're patched up. You're good to go, and the doctor's like, right, this is where you're at. You're stable in your mind. You're stable in your. This is where you're at. This is the recovery that you need to go on. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I do, because once I'm back in Australia, I touched on it before. You feel safe. Mm-hmm. The best medical facilities. You know you're going to get outstanding treatment. So. And then I'm flying to the Alfred Hospital, and I was a bit naive in it all. I thought, okay, I'm back in Melbourne. I'm at the Alfred. I'll get the very best care. But what I didn't understand is when I got to the Alfred, that's real danger stage, because you're just deteriorating. I thought I'm comfortable now, I'll get the best. So that's when, straight into surgery. This was multiple operations for the actual skin grafts, because they couldn't do that in Bali or Darwin. And then into intensive care after that. So the operations, it would have been within sort of 24, maybe 48 hours after all the surgery for the skin grafts. They did talk about this opportunity. If I was struggling with my breathing, they could help me with this. And they talked about this tube, and pretty stubborn, determined by nature, and I didn't want to have a bar of that. So I'm okay. But I do remember one night, and Nerissa was by my bed sort of day and night, and she just went home. We didn't live too far from where the hospital was, and she just went home for a few hours to get some rest. And when she left, I just said to the ICU nurses, I'm actually struggling with my breathing. So they whipped into action straight away. The tube was the incubation, the medical induced coma. And that was me for the next week. So obviously Nerissa comes back, my mum and dad, shock, horror. And I've got my father-in-law took some photos, and at the time I'm thinking, what are you doing? But it's nice to have it to look back on it, because I talk about it a lot. When people see this photo of me, pretty much mummified because of the extent of the burn injuries, tubes hooked up to me everywhere, they think about the pain I'm in when I show this to people. But I can guarantee, and I tell them, I'm in no pain. Because the medications, the drugs, that's why they put you in that. That gives you a chance to actually... your body to and fight this. What I can never quantify, though, I'm in no pain. So everyone thinks you're in pain. No, I'm not. What on earth is the pain like for your fiancé, my brothers, mum and dad? Because the uncertainty of after going into the induced coma, the first 24 hours, would I actually survive? But then beyond that, as I started to stabilise, is okay, physically and mentally, what will I be like when I come out, and how long is this going to be? So the pain with them, I can never begin to imagine being in their situation.
And do you think that helped you cope, or, you know, take your mind off of what was actually going on with your body when you flip that onto your loved ones and onto your, you know, it almost takes it off of the actual source itself, because just being in an induced coma, mate, that's hard. You're deteriorating. Yeah, that's life-saving treatment. You know that now. I know that through my military career. Yep. You know, that's pretty serious before, you know, you're not here anymore. Yeah, they're the critical, crucial moments. And you've got your family by your side. Did that seem like it really, really got you through?
Absolutely. Knowing that, you know, just that family support, and then more broadly what I realised a bit later on in the recovery, just my work being an AFL footballer. So not only my football club, but just the general support of all AFL supporters and the well-wishers. So it gives you so much reason and want to fight and recover. I would say probably for me, the toughest period was after coming out of the coma. Yeah. Because for a couple of days after that, your mind's all over the shop because of the dosage of that medication. So the hallucinations and just some of the weird things that were going on. And probably for me, that period then felt to me like it was worse than what it was like being caught up in the explosion.
With your background and for what you've learnt from sports and from footy, and do you think that elite mindset really kicked in?
And absolutely. Yeah, it did.
And when did it kick in?
Well, it kicked in intensive care after probably those 2 or 3 days after coming out of the coma, because what I love, structure. Mm-hmm. We work training,
structure, discipline,
training schedule, the discipline with your diet and the extra training sessions, whatever. So I grabbed my physio. As soon as I introduced to her, I just clung onto her and I said, can you get a whiteboard, please? And I don't know that this is the norm in intensive care, but the whiteboard come out.
The good old classic whiteboard.
And I needed structure, and she was great. She would come and see me twice a day. Now, to begin with, all I could do was just with one of those like stress balls in a way, start moving my fingers and my hands. But so we'd map that out. So at least I had a bit of structure of what was going on, and that obviously progressed. So my long term, the focus was not about returning to AFL footy then. It was, okay, what's more short and immediate term? December 14, we're getting married. Now the docs are telling me you'll be in hospital for 8 to 10
December,
weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So you're getting married in December, and this is in
this is October. So that's the ultimate goal. But, okay, what is the process? I need to put steps in place.
So the wedding wasn't put off? You're like, I'm
No.
making
When
this
they
wedding.
told me that, they also said highly unlikely with these injuries, AFL footy. But I parked that and I go, okay, well, let's...
Take
so
it
once
one
again,
step at a time.
really positive. When I look back, very ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't allow it to drag me back and get caught up in what had happened. I had an awareness, and there was anger and frustration, but I needed to park that because I thought if I just use so much energy on anger and frustration, I can't get well as quick as I want to.
Yeah, those negative emotions.
No negative emotions. So I'm moving forward. So once I got bit of structure, intensive care. Once I got out of intensive care, 6 West is the Burns ward at the Alfred Hospital, and it was just start to, I could hardly walk. It was with a frame.
Yeah, when you say you had stress balls, and when we talk about rehab, you're learning to walk again. You're learning to get up on your feet.
Yeah.
You're learning to move your arms. You're learning to move your hands.
I'd lost 12 kilo.
Wow.
It was getting down to the physio department. It was on the treadmill, the walker there, but just hanging on for dear life at a very, very slow speed. But these were all these little milestones that, look, in my mind, my goal was, even though I was told 8 to 10, in my mind, I had a goal of a month because I didn't want to get out a week before the wedding or a day before because it wasn't about just making it. It's a bit like returning to play from injury. It's not returning to play. It's returning to perform. Being ready to perform. So I wanted to have a good day. I wanted to it's our wedding. Have a great day. So the goal was around the month. So out of intensive care, slowly working it. But the other advantage I felt I had, now these were different injuries, but I'm an elite athlete.
Yeah.
I train for a living. I'm not having to worry about
the process.
Fitting my training in around work 9 to 5, an accountant or a school teacher or a broker or anything like that. This was me. This is what I did for 13 years. I trained. So we kind of progressed and got to the stage where I was able to walk unassisted. A pivotal moment for me though was when they took me out the front of the Alfred Hospital, Faulkner Park's across the road. And when I ran for the first time, that was a bit of a light bulb moment because my physio, I slowly ran for about 50 metres, and with every step I nearly fell over because I was so weak. And at the end of that 50 metres, I said, okay, how many more are we doing? And my physio, Henrietta, said to me, no, there's no more. That's it. And my old school mentality was more is better. And she's going, no, you got to start listening to me, Jason. Yeah. You do not understand. And I said, well, give me an example. She said, well, the extent of your burn injuries, the stress on your internal organs being in the induced coma, it's the equivalent of it's like having a triple bypass. So then you go, okay, I understand a bit more about that. I just need to trust you. Because the other thing I had to do, which was really difficult, is let go and accept, whilst I'm working hard on what I could do in rehab, accept the help of others. Because I'm a bit stubborn by nature. Yeah. Do it on my own.
Especially when it comes to the physical, right? And the psychological, because you're disciplined, you've got structure, you're a positive thinker, you're extremely fit. And then all of a sudden, you've got to start, not on the second, third rung, you've got to start from the very, very beginning. You've got to learn to walk and you've got to learn to run again.
Yeah. pin-loaded bench press machine down in the physio department. I jumped on there. I went to lift it and I couldn't lift it. I flung around and thought, who's had the pin load? What a shock. I think it was under two. It was under two little plates.
See, as a sort of elite soldier who trains every single day as well, I can imagine that looking back, and it's just shock. That. And you, like you said before, you mentioned it, and you mentioned about, you know, that positive mindset. You know, you've got to sort of take out all the negativity, because the moment you plant a negative seed, we have a horrible tendency of growing it ourselves and being our own worst enemy. You've almost got to go, right, listen, this is what happened. I can't control what happened. Don't try and control what you can't control. But what are the positives that I can do? And again, the goal setting, you know, so your initial goal was the wedding, right? Which is huge, right?
Yeah.
It's a great goal. What did the whiteboard look like? I want to know what that whiteboard looked like. Was it like a network of?
It was just some times and getting that physio twice a day, which you normally don't get. So I had some special treatment there, and then building up beyond that. What is anything I could do? Even though I'm just laying there in a bed, what is there anything that can help me fast track this recovery without doing any more damage, obviously?
Yeah, of course. And that's where you have got to put your trust into, like you said, that was a great example when you ran. It's like, I can go and like, no. It's putting your trust into people as well. You're almost going back to that teamwork, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, it's rather than looking at your muckers, you're like, right, I'm in a completely different situation. Now I have to put my trust and ultimately my whole being in your hands, and it's quite hard to do,
obviously being in that team environment I've done before, but you build that relationship and rapport probably first before then you have that trust. And this is I'm in the hands of the best specialists that are going around, but they're strangers to me as well. But my physio, she's not here with us anymore, unfortunately, but she was, we hit it off so well. Military background. Hong Kong, she's been in the military. I'm 6'3", she was 5 foot nothing. She was a pocket rocket dynamo. And just our personalities we just synced. We were, and with my wife just playing a support role in the background, we were a dynamic team. She was amazing. So,
and you obviously made it to the wedding.
Yeah, we got there. It was, as I'd hope everyone's wedding day is. It was an amazing day. It was in the southeast of South Australia where my wife grew up, and it was just to have over 200 guests. They were just great people that played an important role in our upbringing as kids, but I think more importantly, they were the people that provided my wife, her family, my family, so much strength and support when obviously it was just touch and go for me for that period of time. And there was a number of people that I also hadn't seen that were based in Adelaide or Perth and hadn't seen me since obviously the incident took place. So it was just an amazing day and sort of weekend with close friends and family.
So that was the goal. Then after that goal, you achieved that in the time that you set out to do. Again, you know, bringing to the forefront what you've learned from sport, mindset, discipline, positivity, teamwork, structure, and then that goal was achieved. And then the next goal was to get back playing. Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
And how quick do you achieve that?
Yeah, so my goal was to get back playing, not to play one game, but to continue my career. Because really, for me, after what had happened, my views and my thought process around making a full recovery is I've just got to get back to be doing everything that I was doing prior. So we had the wedding plan, and my work's a bit different, but so be it. So I set a goal that it would be generally the end of March back then was the start of the AFL season. So I told anyone who would care I'll be back playing end of March. And I actually did it 2 weeks earlier. And it was my 29th birthday. It was the 14th of March. Now, it was a practice game, and it was a reserve grade, and it was reserve grade again. But that, to me, when I look back, the pivotal moments, the wedding, and then everyone skips to my return game, which ultimately was my last game. But this moment on my 29th birthday, that was a critical component of my whole recovery, because you set these goals. I look back, and yes, I was very ambitious and hopeful. But that day, when I ran onto that field in a very, very low-level game, and I had pressure garments, both arms.
Yeah.
both hands, both legs to help with I wore them for 12 months. And that was to help with minimise the thickening or what they call keloid scarring. So I wore long sleeves for added protection, and I had to wear gloves because my hands were still a mess, and the gloves are too slippery. So end of March, still pretty warm. Grounds are hard. So every time I hit someone, I would break open grafted skin.
No.
And obviously you'll hit the ground. But for me that day, I had no fears about my injuries that day, return to play. My biggest fear was, can I still do it?
Yeah. Biggest fear was not doing it.
Can I still get a touch?
Yeah.
Can I still play the game? And thankfully, a very, very low-level game, those fears were alleviated. I was able to get involved and I felt pretty good, albeit, and I don't remember the pain around this, but my club doctor, who was amazing as well, he'd just shake his head. And I think it was because I was so focused and driven towards what I wanted to achieve. I just don't remember the pain then. But these garments would pull with blood from the grafted skin that you'd torn and would just patch up and just go again. But what I did find quite remarkable was through this process, what slightly changed for me, probably the information I was getting medically, that there was, what could the long-term effects be at continuing at this high level? What could the implications be there? And I couldn't really get the answers I was after. I also had a very minor calf injury to do with the shrapnel wound, which frustrated the life out of me because I knew I was close to getting back into the AFL team. And when that happened, I almost gave up. Because it just took me for that Sunday night when it happened in the game on the Sunday, it just took me back to the journey of my AFL career, and that was coming into the system, playing at Collingwood, moving to Adelaide. We won a premiership in 97. I didn't play. I moved to North Melbourne. We play Adelaide in 1998. We lose. We're the top-ranked side and we lost. 1999, I play every game and I get reported the week before the grand final and suspended. Can't play the grand final. We win. I miss out. You go on holidays and you get caught up and you get blown up in a terrorist and just going, this is too hard. It's not meant to be, obviously. But again, my wife, a couple of teammates, my mate Peter from Perth, who was in Bali with me, they just, hey, this is pretty minor in the scheme of things. So they got me for that fleeting moment. Yeah. It was like, no, I can't do it. And they got me back on track. And that was really important. But it was that couple of week period where I realised that I was able to do a lot of training, but I wasn't doing the physical contact. I wasn't breaking open grafted skin. I felt like I had more energy. And I was being told that a full recovery from these burns injuries is probably 2 or 3 years. So that's when I'm sitting down there with my wife and I'm thinking, I still want to continue on this journey and get back. But maybe it has to be whenever I get back at AFL level. Yep. It is just the one game and it's not the continuation of my career. So thankfully when we discussed that and I made that decision and the two of us just sat on that and didn't share it with anyone, it was only 4 weeks later that I did get selected to play. So
amazing. Yeah. That amazing feeling.
Yeah.
To add, Jason, amazing story, mate. Really, really powerful, especially being sat here in the studio with you. You mentioned 2 things here and I just want to wrap up on this. You mentioned ambition and hope.
Yep.
In what you did. How important is ambition and hope?
I think it's critical. It's critical. You need to, like what I did being an athlete, you're always working towards something, but I'm big on the ability to celebrate milestones along the way, because if we're all focused on that bigger picture, so in what I do, the AFL Premiership, they're hard to win. They're hard to win. There's certainly milestones along the way that you need to reward yourself or your team and enjoy the successes along the way.
Small victories,
whilst keeping an eye on the bigger picture, because if it's all the bigger picture and you're not enjoying yourself along the way, you're going to be pretty miserable because you can't, unfortunately, you don't always win.
Yeah, of course.
Someone
That's
might
life,
be
right?
just a bit
That's
better.
Life, right?
That is life.
Yeah.
So that was the ambition, the hope for me, that was pivotal in the recovery, that the positivity was just had to be there. Like I said, I can just never, people ask me, what are my thoughts towards the people who undertook this terrorist attacks? And it's like, yeah, there's some anger, there's frustration, definitely. But it's more the why, like what's achieved. It saddens me in a way when I think back and I've seen some documentaries have been put together around it. It's just like, why? Why do you do this?
Yeah.
So that probably took over a bit of the anger. And
it's their why, it's not your why. So it's like something you can't control, something that you can't comprehend or even try to understand.
Absolutely.
So it's a case of like, I've got to just leave that.
Yeah. So I probably had an ability to do that too, because after I returned and played, I got a phone call on the Monday, Federal Police in Bali. I was summoned to appear back in Bali with Peter Hughes, my mate, and another guy from Tasmania. We were the 3 Australians to give victim impact statements in the trial against one of the perpetrators, Amrosi. So that was an extremely difficult day to sit in a courtroom or a hall, and there you were 5 metres away from other perpetrators. But that, for me, as hard as it was, it helped me give that understanding of, okay, we've been asked to give a victim impact statement, which was difficult because you can only talk about the impact on you as an individual, when I'm acutely aware of the devastation it caused for so many, and so many that were far, far worse, as bad as it was for me and Peter and Stu, the other guy, far worse, and we can only talk about ourselves. But it probably allowed me to go, okay, you've been asked to do this. We're the first Australians to ever give evidence in a terrorism trial. The world media, but you've done what you've had to do, and whatever the course of action beyond that, I've got no control of. So let the system take care of that. Yeah. And really, for us, it was about just going forward with our life, because it's a big part of me. It's a big part of us. And I still love Bali, and I still travel there, and I love the people there. But also, I'm lucky. Mm. I was, for whatever reason, fortunate enough to make it out. I've got a life to live. Yeah. I think if you get dragged back and caught in what happened 21 years ago, I'm very respectful of what happened. Like I said, it's always there. It's in my heart. But I've got to make the most of this second chance I've got in life, really. Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a bit pointless.
And also for the people that helped you through.
Yeah, amazing. Like I think of the medical teams, that couple from Sydney that were living in Singapore, what they did for me and many others, and just emergency services. At my last game, we had over 100 people there, and we had a lot of those people. And it was just a privilege to have them part of, because they were part of the journey for me, but what they did for so many others as well. Mm. And look, they do that daily. And you realise and understand that with the focus on myself and so many others injured, rightfully so, or people that lost loved ones, sometimes they're the ones that are forgotten. Yeah. The forgotten people.
Forgotten heroes.
What they do and what they see, my goodness, amazing.
Amazing, mate. Listen, I could spend another hour with you, absolutely.
Great to chat.
Thanks for your story, mate. Real powerful message there, about ambition, about hope, about positivity, about taking charge of the one thing that no one can take from you, and that's the way that you think, your mindset. Make it work to your advantage, make it work for you, because ultimately if it doesn't, it works against you. So use the positive people around you, and life is one big team. Like you mentioned before about all these amazing people, that's what we've got to realise as well, that you can't do it alone. Thanks for coming on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Wonderful. No, thanks for your time, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm Middleton. Catch you again next time.